The number one resolution for people last year was to save more money, but nearly half gave up by February. Don't let that be you. Download Rocket Money to reach your financial goals this year. Track your spending, cut waste, and automate savings in one simple app. Rocket Money shows you all your expenses and categorizes them so you know exactly where your money's going and where you're overspending. From there, the app cuts waste by canceling your unused subscriptions and lowering your bills. No customer service needed. With that money freed up, the app will automatically set some cash aside for your goals, whether it's an emergency fund, paying off debt, or saving for vacation. Rocket Money's got you covered. Users love the app with over 186,000 five-star ratings. And on average, users can save up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Make saving money a priority this year. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
We had a good speech. We got great reviews. I can't believe it. We got good reviews in that speech. Usually they say he's a horrible dictator type person. I'm a dictator. But sometimes you need a dictator. But they didn't say that in this case.
Welcome to Quiet Riot, the politics podcast that takes its listeners both seriously and literally. I'm Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith. Each week we bring down the temperature and work our way through the issues with you rather than at you.
And we suggest what actions you can take because politics, like a diet, works best when one can see results.
So shake off the umbrella, pour a hot brew and settle down for another Quiet Riot.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex, trying to stay pragmatic while holding on to hope.
And I'm Naomi, trying to stay pragmatic while holding on to Alex's hope.
And I'm Kenny, trying to keep those two to time, of which there is little hope.
This week, world leaders download the latest season of Bridgerton, inflate their travel pillows and clear their schedules for the entire afternoon as Trump arrives at Davos.
And while the orange blimp monopolises attention and oxygen about all things happening globally, Alex and I are going to take stock of the domestic, coming back to the UK, zeroing in on Parliament and chewing over what's happening at home, not just abroad.
Since there's been so much going on, we decided to do a guest-free show this week because, to be honest, I would quite like to know what my position on all this stuff is before someone tells me. So let's work through everything together and go back to guests next week.
Hold each other's hand.
If there is a next week. As the great and the not-so-good gathered in Davos for the annual World Economic Forum meeting, they must have hoped that yet another global summit would not be derailed by Donald Trump. Fat chance. As the first day of the summit dawned, European leaders woke up to screen grabs of their private messages being posted by the US president amid all-caps rants and outright threats that made Brooklyn Beckham's Insta look measured and considerate. Trump is escalating, excitable pundits told excitable podcasts. Trump is spiraling, I say. Potato, potato. Whether the man in possession of the world's most destructive nuclear codes is losing his grip on reality because of madness or wickedness seems a conversation for later, if there is a later. Elbows up, said Canadian Prime Minister Carney in a speech that echoed across European capitals.
We have a recognition of what's happening and a determination to act accordingly. We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just. This is the task of the middle powers. The countries that have the most to lose from a world of fortresses and the most to gain from genuine cooperation. The powerful have their power, but we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us.
So who would turn up? The Trump that perhaps noticed the stock market having its worst day for months since, well, his last hissy fit, and reeled the machismo in? Or the Trump that confirms finally that the US is not merely an unreliable ally, but an actual threat to Europe? Which Trump turned up, would you say?
Come Can I just, before we get into it, I feel more stupid than I did 2 hours ago. I mean, the pain of listening to that. Like, I know the brain is meant to have nerve endings that you could, mine does now. The ache, I could feel it dying as I was forced to listen.
Yeah. And I listened to 2 hours from the White House yesterday.
Right, and all
well.
Q&A after.
See, I'd listened to that White House ordeal yesterday as well, and I found myself zoning out very quickly today at the points where he repeated his ramblings. Some of them, not all of them, but there were little bits where you think he's rambling again. Oh, hang on, that's the same ramble as from yesterday.
Oh, a lot of them are. It's a sort of put together of his greatest hits, which is always quite a big tell of early stage dementia. I mean, not so early stage in this case. But on both occasions, I had the impression that I was looking at someone who was really very unwell. I mean, put politics, everything aside.
Yeah.
Like, this was the stage at which we looked at each other with my sisters and decided to take the fuse out of the plug of the cooker in Mum's house because we thought she might burn down the house.
Right. Your mum, who is then diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
With Alzheimer's. And this man has the nuclear codes. And he's, in my view, completely lost. I don't know if that's because his malignant narcissism has finally taken over to an extent that has maddened him, or that he does genuinely have some cognitive decline. But what is clear to me is that I'm now looking at a very unwell person. And I don't know what the world is meant to do about that.
We should remember that he did have to jump on a plane, which then turned back because of an electrical problem.
They should have risked it, I think.
I think so as well. Alex just took the fuse out of the entire plane. World gives Alex a big prize.
I know.
But I mean, he must have been exhausted.
But presumably they give him
Of course, he takes a sleeping tablet and sleeps through the entire journey.
No, but then an amphetamine on arrival.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's on downers and uppers. But I think to an extent, most world leaders
must be
do that because of the amount of flying they do.
Yeah. So the Trump who turned up today being the day he made his Davos speech, was, as you quite rightly put it, Alex, the guy who reaches for his greatest hits. When he's in a bind, what can I actually remember? I am great. I have done all these wonderful things. I have reinforced the US military. I have opened up all the restaurants in Washington. I've ended 8+ wars. And I think another telltale sign of cognitive decline is an unusual sleep pattern. So before he's done the long haul trip to Davos, it was what time of the morning when he posts the Truth Social rant about the Nobel Peace Prize and the letter to Norway. I mean, it was like 2:30 a.m. his time.
I mean, he's a man of a certain age. In his defense,
got to get up in the middle of the night.
He's going to be up several times every night.
I'm just happy to know that he still gets up.
Yes. Every night, 4 o'clock, like clockwork he thinks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he doesn't get up till 5.
Europe, I'm helping NATO, and I've until the last few days when I told them about Iceland, they loved me. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money.
There is something there that feels quite brittle, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. You can see him actively covering up for the fact that he keeps losing his thread. It's not a weave. He keeps losing his thread of thought and going down byways. Yeah, actually.
And it was boring. It was a boring speech.
Yeah.
It was incredibly boring because we've heard it all before, bar, a couple of little pockets, but all of the barbs that Europe and the UK in particular, we've heard it all before. All of the rhetoric around how fucking brilliant he is and all these wonderful things he's achieved and how terrible Biden is and how terrible Obama is, we've heard it all before. And that was what was so staggering to me, was that the speech of the week that the whole world was sort of hanging on for, it was dull. It was an incredibly boring thing to have to...
And low energy.
Very
Incredibly low energy. And that's significant for lots of reasons, not least of which, of course, is that Trump has been put in place because he is a showman, because he is the ultimate snake oil salesman, because he gives good quotes and he gives good camera.
It was the speech that we all assumed was going to be the one where we got clarity or something. He ends up saying, I'm not going to take Greenland by force.
He did go back to saying the US just wants to buy it and that it's just a simple business transaction. And it used to happen all the time. That's how countries acquired territory. But he was also threatening.
What does the United States get out of all of this work, all of this money, other than death, destruction, and massive amounts of cash going to people who don't appreciate what we do? They don't appreciate what we do. I'm talking about NATO, I'm talking about Europe. We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it, as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them.
He was saying, I don't want to have to use force, and I'm not going to use force, but this is how much we spent on our military, and if we wanted to use force, we'd be unstoppable. If you were doing contract law 101, is that a meeting of the minds, or is that give me Greenland?
There was two things that I took away from today's performance. One was that in Davos itself, there were some very important people getting turned away from the hall. But Carney didn't hang around to watch it. Starmer didn't go out to watch it at all. There's a level at which the fact that he is now giving a keynote speech is no longer something that people have to go to. It's actually becoming something that we'll watch him because he's box office. But if we're grown-ups, we don't want to be there. We don't want to be part of that circus.
I think that's interesting because I thought the audience gave him nothing. And it's quite telling where we are globally at the moment that I also thought, fuck, we're going to pay for that later when he's on Air Force One and, truthing. This was successful, rich business people, primarily in the audience. This wasn't just political people. This was the world's richest entrepreneurs and company owners. This was a packed hall. And it was basically 3 staffers clapping enthusiastically and then about 20 people giving him lukewarm applause.
Carney got a stand-up, didn't he?
Yeah, he got a standing O. That, I think, is telling and also dangerous.
Yeah.
One of the things we know about the way markets work in our economy is that if you can create chaos and you know roughly when the chaos is going to happen, you can make a fortune from it. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Team Trump have been doing very well off the back of it. But within that audience, there must be plenty of people who, one way or another, have
lost money,
and others who have benefited as well. And that tension between the winners and the losers amongst the very wealthiest operators on the planet, because they're both in there. That's the thing.
It's interesting you should say that. Actually, I'll drop in a clip of the very end of his speech.
The explosion of prosperity and conclusion and progress that built the West did not come from our tax codes. It ultimately came from our very special culture. This is the precious inheritance that America and Europe have in common. We share it. We share it, but we have to keep it strong. We have to defend that culture and rediscover the spirit that lifted the West from the depths of the Dark Ages to the pinnacle of human achievement. We live in an incredible, changing period. In our hands are technologies that our ancestors could scarcely have. They couldn't have even dreamt some of the things that we see today. And so rapidly they're produced. AI, 2 years ago, nobody ever heard of the term, and now everybody's talking about it. And it can have some very good purpose. It could also have some dangerous purpose, and for that we have to watch out. But some tremendous things are happening because of it. It is the pioneers in this room. Many of you in this room are true pioneers. You're truly brilliant people. And some of you are the greatest leaders anywhere in the world. You're the greatest brains anywhere in the world. The future is unlimited, and to a large part because of you, and we have to protect you, and we have to cherish you. I always say we have to cherish our brilliant people because there aren't many of them. We're in a position to do things that nobody else has ever even thought of before. And many of the people in this room are the ones that are doing it, and I want to congratulate you, and I'm with you all the way. You can do things that nobody else can even think about. So I congratulate you on your tremendous success. And the United States is back, and I'll see you around. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
And I thought he was saying very, very clearly that I've got your interests at heart.
Following barely coded racist attack on low IQ people from Somalia.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's essentially what's keeping Trump in power, even though he's clearly quite batty. What remains is his core affection for rich people.
Quiet, Riot. Quiet, Riot. Let's talk then about other people that have spoken at Davos or in the margins of it. We had former central banker, Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, very much among a crowd who already highly rate him and respect him. And he has obviously, therefore, a very receptive audience to what he said. And what he said was that, quote, middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we are on the menu. Alex, how did you react to what he said?
I mean, he's right. Obviously, everything in that speech was absolutely correct. I don't think there was anything in it that any intelligent observer or any other world leader will go, gosh, I didn't know that. Thanks, Mark. It hadn't occurred to me that we're now in a different environment. Is there value and power to verbalizing it? Probably. So it felt a little bit redundant, but at the same time, it was good to see someone actually say it out loud.
Exactly. It wasn't so much what he said. It was the fact he actually said anything at all.
Yeah, and with skin in the game,
Very
because
much.
big border with the US. And the other day, among the various AI images that Trump published was one that showed the whole of North America, including Greenland, Mexico, and Canada, in US colours.
We talk a lot about banning social media for the under 16s. I'm up for it if we do it for the boomers too. Like whoever taught Trump how to use a meme generator and the AI, like needs shooting. No, turn it off.
But can I tell you, I think his WhatsApp is basically Laura Loomer and people like that
Going
sending him
share
the
this,
memes,
share this.
and he wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks, that's brilliant,
That's brilliant, and it goes.
posts it. So I don't think it's even...
I agree with Kenny that what was wonderful about Carney was that not only did he spell out that the world has changed, that there's no point having nostalgia for what we've lost. We've just got to adapt, pragmatically move on. It's the courage that gives others to say the same thing. And Alex, you're dead right. No other country is as intertwined culturally. There'll be so many Canadian-American families divided across this border now, huge amount of trade. What he has done, I think, is to signal to European leaders in particular, but I think to an extent Australia, New Zealand, other parts of the Anglosphere, that it is a gambler's fallacy to double down now on this issue of, but we're so intertwined we can't possibly really unwind now. It is a sunk cost.
Yeah.
That Atlantis is a model. And you just got to write it off like any good economist and move on to the other thing.
Multipolar
world.
defense.
And it's a very good place to start because the inevitable outcome of what's going on is either one side backs down completely or there's a period of tension. And the period of tension will involve costs being borne by both sides. The amount of US Treasury debt that's held around the world, that's held by Britain, that's held by Europe.
Sell it.
Well, there's the thing. The moment you start to sell the debt, there's a cost because the value of the debt you're holding starts to drop as well. Everything is intertwined. And I think this comes back to the point you were both making about how Carney was absolutely on the money. Essentially to say the world is a different place to what it was 2 years ago and it's going to hurt. And what we need to do today is not standing alone and shouting loudly. It's about choosing your allies carefully, but then turning up together. And what happens in the wake of Trump's appearance today at Davos, I think, is going to set the tone.
I do agree that there is value in Carney articulating this, but the vibe of the media coverage of all this stuff has been excitement. They're wetting their pants about everything that's going on. And to me, that feels really like the wrong tone. And the vibe on the Carney stuff was that, wow, What a brilliant realization. And it's like everyone knew this stuff. There is value to saying it, but please don't treat other European leaders as if they're not working behind the scenes to disentangle themselves from America while smiling and being nice. That's what diplomacy is.
The answer is not to lash out at Washington and Trump individually, but to rebalance strategically and honestly towards Europe. Plus, is that the EU plus Ukraine plus the EFTA countries that aren't formally part of the EU, Canada, as I said earlier, potentially even Australia, New Zealand, because I think clinging to the fading Atlantic model out of habit or pride is not a strategy.
Yeah, no, that's true.
That is sunk cost, a gambler's fallacy in action. And certainly for the UK, our future security is going to be dependent on recognising that reality. And I think if I had any kind of criticism of how the UK government has positioned their comms around it, it has been to not articulate publicly that they recognise that reality.
Yes,
and I'm not saying to bash. It's
I agree. I think that is actually
that's the bit that's missing.
Yeah, I think that is significant because if I were a Canadian listening to that, I would derive quite a lot of comfort from knowing that my government understands what's going on and is preparing on that basis. While here in Europe, we have to take it on faith that our governments understand what's going on.
At a time when public trust in our body politic has never been lower.
And are preparing for that inevitability.
Exactly.
And there is a bit of anxiety. And the reason I'm anxious about it is actually because I heard European leaders say they were going to Trump-proof Europe before. After 2016, there was very much a never again vibe.
I agree with you completely.
And then Trump went and all of it went out the window and they didn't do the preparation.
I completely agree with you on 2 points. First, you're dead right. The saying that they would do it and they're not doing it, what you're doing is kind of admitting, we know we probably should wean ourselves off the teat of America, but actually we don't have the courage to tell our own domestic audience what the cost of that will be and how painful economically that might be in the short term in order to get long-term security. Secondly, there was YouGov polling out about where Britons stand on the US. 50 to 25% of Britons think Europe can ride out Donald Trump, saying that once he has gone, US foreign policy towards Europe will revert to how it was before.
Yeah, it won't.
It won't, and Trump is not an aberration because they went back for more. The Americans went back for more. And I just think we need to accept that. Our leaders need to publicly admit that they accept that and therefore say we are moving to a model where we are reducing our reliance on the USA.
Okay, so I think that's the key point of Carney's speech, actually.
Me too.
More than anything else, the thing he said, and it's interesting that it was verbatim in Macron's speech before him and Ursula von der Leyen speaking to the European Parliament on Wednesday, was this is not a blip. Do not expect things to go back to normal after some sort of electoral event. And that is the important part of it, right? Understanding that. And I'll give listeners a really simple thought experiment. Let's say, by hook or by crook, by coercion, by threatening, by money, whatever,
by manufacturing
Trump
a war.
ends up acquiring Greenland. And then someone like Obama gets elected. Do you think that person gives Greenland back to Denmark? The answer is quite clear in my mind.
There's an issue I've got, and you know what I'm like around language. I always say that words are important.
What do you think, though? What's your answer to the hypothetical?
The answer will be bound up in what I'm about to say, in that I've long been of the view that as dangerous as Trump is, he's a very, very useful distraction to those behind the scenes. That Trump himself, being a mouthpiece for policy, isn't the be-all and end-all. When we are all talking about Trump, inevitably our attention is not being spent on things that it should be spent upon. And it's why when I see the calls for impeachment in particular, there's a little shiver goes down my spine, because an impeachment deals with a symptom, a really horrible, nasty symptom, but it's only a symptom. Impeachment does not deal with the problem. And the problem, as you've just articulated, Alex, is the fact that America has changed. And the people that pull the strings are very wealthy and have become amazingly wealthier in the last 6, 7, 8 years. And so when we talk about Trump, when we talk about his rambling speeches, when we talk about impeaching him, we're talking about an individual. Our problem is with the system that supports him and that uses him, and with a nation willing to support that system in sufficient numbers. And if you take that plug it into what Carney was talking about, you find yourself in a position which kind of starts to answer your question. The whole system and a large part of the electorate is now in a place where the rules have changed or the rules have been abandoned.
But that's the premise of MAGA.
Yes.
And it's also the premise of Brexit. In order to want to make America great again or to take back control, the premise is that America has ceded its greatness or that Britain had ceded its control. That's the illusion. And the moment you've accepted that premise, that we are no longer great like we used to be, then you have quite a big silent majority, I think, who think, which takes us actually to Gavin Newsom, I think, quite neatly.
Yeah, you had a
So he had some
reaction.
quite strident advice for Europeans. Let's have a little listen.
Just, I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. I mean, handing out crowns and this is pathetic. Nobel Prizes that are being given away. I mean, it's just pathetic. And I hope people understand how pathetic they look on the world stage. I mean, at least from an American perspective. A year ago, we should have been having this conversation, and they didn't. Okay? And now you're paying the price. Well, I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but why don't folks do what they say publicly, what they're saying in private? Why don't they just simply do what they know is right? I mean, everybody's talking behind his back. They're laughing at him. Meanwhile, they're sucking up to him. It's embarrassing.
How did that sit with you?
I feel like we should ask you that question.
No,
because you were not happy.
No, I was not happy. And, I quite like Newsom in the sense that he's one of the few people actively resisting Trump in at least a meme way. Having seen that little episode, I now wonder whether he's satirizing Trump or emulating Trump, and I'm not sure which. I thought everything he said was right.
It shouldn't have been him saying
And
it.
I also thought, shut the fuck up, man.
Yeah.
You supported Biden right to the end when there was not enough time for another candidate to do anything different for your career. You are a senior Democrat in a party that is providing almost zero resistance right now. And now you're giving advice to a continent trying to deal with a fallout. Like, what power did we have to prevent Trump? And what power do we have to constrain him now? You're the one that has that power. By comparison.
Yeah.
Obviously, the people truly to blame are Trump's enablers, the Republicans, the people who voted for him. That's the first order. But as between me and Gavin fucking Newsom, governor of the biggest state in
I don't think he was calling you out.
He was calling all of us pussies.
Yeah, well.
And I just thought, actually, shut up.
Well, we know what you think. Kenny?
He was sanctimonious, and that's a very, very bad look for anybody. I don't think there's any circumstances in which being a sanctimonious prick is a good idea. If you've got a message to deliver it, but do it with some dignity. And I thought he cost himself a whole bunch of dignity. But also, there's that inevitable, and you touched on this, Alex, this idea that he wasn't looking in the mirror at all.
At all.
It wasn't looking hard enough and saying, look, we're all guilty here and we all need to pull together, and I will start with me and what I've done wrong, which is really a very, very good place for everybody to start. Every single one of us, whether we're listening in America or in Europe right now. There was none of that. There was none of the Carney approach either. There was nothing diplomatic. There was nothing statesmanlike about it.
Because Carney was putting himself in that group and saying this is what we need to do to move forward. And Newsom very much was setting himself outside this group when he's a lot more responsible than anyone in that group for what's going on, right?
Yeah.
The time to, what did he say? The time to be serious was
yesterday.
Was 2024
2016.
Or 2016. That was the time to be serious, when it would have cost you your own career ambitions.
My little takeaway from that horrible Newsom moment was, though, it was such an insight into how he operates. He's such a good soundbite master. He's so good at social media. He's so good at
And rage bait. And
all of that stuff. But there's an ego there. Egos, when they're well constrained, are good. To get us all out of bed in the morning, egos are good in companies. But when egos run out of control, bad news for everybody, really. You don't rock up at a place like that and say, by the way, all the European leaders, you're all dicks. And here's your knee pads. Good luck, lads.
Yeah.
I thought he really let himself down.
He was doing exactly the same thing Trump does. He was belittling and demeaning an international community trying to cope with a really horribly difficult situation. And anyone who pretends they know what the right answer is full of shit, by the way, because I've seen also loads of takes that are like, well, this proves that Europe making such an effort to go along with Trump was nonsense. Well, maybe. If your foreign policy position is, we should have pissed off the mad guy with the nuclear codes sooner when we were less prepared, that would have been a good thing to do. That's a position to hold. Fair enough. But I don't think there is much wisdom in it.
One last thing that really rankled me is that he's come from a country where there are goon squads on the street shooting people in the face. You got to have some chutzpah to go to another continent, tell all the leaders there that they're dicks, when you've come as a politician from a country where both lethal and non-lethal rounds are being used on your own citizens. Look in the mirror.
Quiet. Riot. Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
Quiet. Riot. Let's finish this section then by looking at Davos and WEF in the round. It had been, according to most media reports, falling in its significance as a alliance, a meeting, a convening space for globalists and all of the pejorative words that get used to describe business leaders and world leaders. Has that changed this year with the fall of organisations like NATO perhaps having less apparent influence than they did before? Is Davos now back on the map as a place where you can get actual FaceTime with world leaders?
There's part of Davos that I think has become simultaneously more and less important because of the way that wealth in the Western world in particular has continued to flee up towards the hyper-rich. And I don't know whether any of the tech bros were at Davos.
I would imagine some of them must have been, or at least representatives.
They don't really have to be there, do they? They operate in a level. And that's one of the things that occurred to me about Davos. I think definitely Trump turning up and doing Trump thing is good for box office. There's a level of super rich and super influential people who are just like the rest of us. If you give them the chance to get a ticket to a big old concert, they want that ticket. Regardless of what's happening, they want to be able to say they were there. But at a level above that, where real decisions are made, I suspect that Davos itself has been outstripped by the changing balance between the Elon Musks of the world.
The oligarchy and the oligarchy.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. In a strange way, Trump's appearance there and all this stuff around it made it more crucial, but also diminished it as a forum because it was all about the Donald Trump show in some way. The interesting thing for me, the sort of unspoken thing, is if you observe the pattern of what's going on at Davos, right? You had a moment, I think around about the mid-2010s, where there seemed to be a realization there that the levels of inequality were so wide that rich people needed to find a solution to reducing that a little bit because the moment was coming that would mean slit throats, which is how that level of inequality always ends up. And I wonder if what has changed that equation is this maybe real, maybe false hope that AI will mean you don't need that many little people, that you can actually be very rich and operate in a kind of utopia with just a few servants rather than a big working class.
Jobs are through the roof, and I made a statement the other day, thank goodness for robots, because we're never going to have enough people to run all these places that are being built. And I think robots are actually going to be a very big business. I think it's going to be surprisingly big, but I think we're going to need it. We're going to need it.
I wonder if that's the unspoken part of that equation, and if that's the unspoken part of the whole Greenland thing. Because, again, I think about it and I think, what does AI need? It needs cold temperatures, it needs loads of water, it needs rare earth minerals, and it needs fuel.
It needs one other thing. It needs a business model that works.
Sure, but let's say you bought into the business model in practical terms. It could be that Greenland is being prepped to be a big, old data center.
It was perfect.
Basically.
It's cool.
So
It's cheap.
For now.
So that's the real question, right? Is there something more going on in the background? Because Project 2025,
Greenland wasn't in it.
we tend to hear things that Trump says and fit them into it. And in part, that's because I think the team around him builds scaffolding around
his
every
announcements,
stupid
yeah.
idea he has. They instantly start building some kind of logic around
To
it.
some extent, all politicians' teams do that.
Sure,
sure.
sure.
I've had many a phone call from a
Sure,
staffer
but-
going, Naomi,
I know.
he said this.
But a
What
lot
can I
of
do?
politicians don't have quite that many brain farts, and they're not quite so far away from policy. But like Greenland is nowhere in 2025. Is there any sign that there are people behind the scenes who are beginning to think he's now too unreliable, he's now becoming a liability?
On that note, and linked very much to AI, the tech bros, and whether they are sitting at this supra level above all of our world leaders, our call to action this week is to head over to Carol Cadwallader's Substack on the Broligarchy. She is doing incredible investigative journalism, tracking the movements, the money, the levers of control behind the men who are really running the world.
Quiet Riot.
And now it's the time in the show where Alex goes, where us snowflakes fear to tread. It's time, of course, for Wokey Dokie.
Wokey dokie.
It doesn't feel funny anymore, man, because, there's part of that going on in the background as well,
Yeah.
right? We see, we're going to come to talk about the domestic side of things, but we are seeing people who pretended sovereignty was everything to them really quite glad about the idea of becoming a protectorate of the United States, provided Trump saves them from woke.
Yep.
So this week, there were some very interesting interactions on the reform side.
Uh-oh.
And the parts of the commentariat that sit on the right of reform, Dan Wootton,
He loves Rupert Lowe.
he was very disappointed that Reform chose a Muslim woman as their London mayoral candidate.
That's a dual bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Muslim and woman.
Yeah. And he launched on some really awful shit. And people like Tim Montgomery started admonishing him, saying that I'm very disappointed in you.
Yeah.
As all
Sad.
Dan, but most of all.
So basically the accusation was that Reform has gone woke by choosing Lila Cunningham. And some of the people objecting to that were suggesting that it's Dan Wootton that's woke. So,
Go on. Talk me through that.
well, because he's meant to be against identity politics. Are you with me?
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
I'm doing
and
it.
he's
I'm connecting the
rejecting her purely because of identity politics. Therefore, he's the woke one.
Hoist by his own miserable petard.
I thought Albie did an interesting tweet.
Yeah.
How would you feel if someone said they didn't want a gay at Mayo of London?
Yeah.
Mayo.
If you click on that, it says deleted account. So I find quite tempting to start an account called Mayor of London that's all about condiments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Actually, that would be a good business model, right? Mayor of London, selling all kind of specialty mayonnaises.
Yeah.
All the other podcasts will struggle to catch
Yeah,
up.
and
Thank you very much.
yeah, so I don't know who's woke this week. It's either Reform
Or Dan
the people
Wootton.
to the right of Reform, or maybe
Nazis are
both
woke.
of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot.
Meanwhile, back home, Keir Starmer, who had decided, probably wisely, to give Davos a wide berth, showed a surprising and welcome amount of steel under attack at PMQs from Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, I've made out my position on Greenland absolutely clear on Monday and a moment ago. President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so. Given that that was his express purpose, I'm surprised the Leader of the Opposition has jumped on the bandwagon. I had understood her position. Mr. Speaker, I had understood her position to be that she supported the government's position on the future of Greenland. Now she appears to support words by President Trump to undermine the government's position on the future of Greenland. She's chosen naked opportunism over the national interest.
You've heard me go on about this a number of times because I think it's quite important and no one's bloody talking about it. There used to be a convention about the sort of foreign security issues on which opposition parties tended to row behind the government unless there was genuinely a fundamental difference of opinion, because it served no one to weaken the Prime Minister on the international stage. Kemi Badenoch has cut with that tradition for a number of months now. Where do you think the Chagos stuff fits into that?
Sheer desperation. This is a woman who finally is performing a little bit better than at the beginning, yet nonetheless is facing rebellion, defection, plotting, and an enormous number of voters rejecting what her party is offering.
Yeah.
And I don't believe any of it is coming from a place of ideology. I think it is entirely coming from a place of weakness and desperation. And I must just scrabble to hit an unpopular Prime Minister, lest I get even further toxified by his unpopularity by backing anything he does. So I agree with you. I think it's a dangerous precedent to be setting and to have broken with it. But also the Mail and the Telegraph
are opposed to the deal. Therefore, it's an easy
blow to land, even if it probably won't pay off for her because it is only aping what Reform and others have already come out with. And now, of course, Donald Trump, having signed off on the Chagos deal, now getting up in the middle of the night for a wee and deciding that, no, it's a terrible idea. And lots of people inferring that it is Farage messaging him saying, by the way, if you're annoyed with Starmer over putting one soldier in Greenland, why don't you come out with something against Chagos? That will really hurt him.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage has been working away, speaking to all of his many contacts in Washington, because he has influence there, which unfortunately a lot of our politicians don't have. I'm not sure that Keir Starmer has anything like the influence or respect from Donald Trump that he thinks he's got. And the statement issued by the president today shows that at last the president's woken up to this.
So what a tangled web we weave, but it is dangerous to have broken with the precedent of matters of national security for opposition not to be, at least in public, trying to show that they are. Yeah.
It's also just a reminder of how depressing the short-termist political grandstanding is these days. There were some dividing lines between what was acceptable fuel for headlines the next day or these days for social media and for sound bites. But it seems that everything is now fair game. Just let's get us through the next 24 hours or 48 hours of the news cycle. I mean, once upon a time, there's no way this would have been turned into a wedge issue. But that's exactly what she's trying to do with Chagos right now. It's not like it's all they speak of on the streets of Romford. It really isn't. It's not something that resonates with the vast majority of people in Britain, but it is a fabulously useful source of political fuel. And it will put the Prime Minister on the back foot at PMQs. And that's it. National interest be damned.
And it didn't.
And it didn't at all.
It didn't actually. He had his best PMQs, I thought, in ages.
For a while, yeah.
Is there also an intellectual conflict? She got up and said, we completely agree with you. Greenland, rejecting this idea of might is right and that the US can take Greenland because it can, and in the same breath saying we should keep Chagos because we can.
Yeah.
The argument is we're in a different world now where everyone can do whatever the fuck they want in terms of bullying smaller players. Therefore, why don't we do it smaller players as well, while condemning the US for doing the same thing?
I mean, totally. And therein lies her problem. It is still unclear what, I mean, we often talk about the lack of knowing what Starmerism really is, what's the project, what's the vision. We don't know for her. And, famously during her leadership election against Jenrick, committed to not setting out any policy, made a feature of that in her campaign. No, I'm going to take my time. We need to recalibrate. We've had a hugely humiliating general election, but we're 19 months on more from that. And I don't think it's any clearer now, really, what her brand of conservatism is offering the country that isn't covered by reform.
And actually, she's doing the opposite. She's making up policy on the hoof for opportunistic reasons.
And with all of the baggage that comes with having been a minister in different roles. So I've got a question for you both. We are now more than halfway through the first month of the new year. If we wind back a month, the prevailing wisdom was probably both Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer will face serious leadership challenges after what is still predicted to probably be a pretty big drubbing for both the main parties at the May elections. Do we think either or both of them are safer midway through January than they were midway through, say, November?
That's interesting.
If you take it on a really short-term basis, as in the last 48 hours, yeah, it's probably marginal, but in the last 48 hours, they've both performed in their own respective ways better. But between now and May, I cannot see a world in which between now and May, both of them managed to either improve their standing in the chaos that we're living in at the moment, or head off the increasingly ambitious people who are sort of left in the respective parties as well. That's not going to change. That's not going to change at all.
Public appetite will change, though, because not just the last 48 hours, but the last month has brought such huge instability and insecurity and threat of war. The head of our security services saying, we're not at war, but we're not at war. Yeah. I think that there will be both a loathing that will continue for our political class and for the current government, but I think there will also be a don't you dare descend into internecine warfare right now at a moment of quite significant peril.
So I think that applies to Starmer because he's in the chair at the moment. And I think this insecurity is probably what's feeding those weird polls where, everyone hates Starmer, but if you ask them straight up who would make a better prime minister, he wins head to head with almost everyone else.
Well, I think that just doesn't say much about the others.
Well, no, but it does say something, I think. It says that people still understand this is a dangerous moment and changing horse midstream is probably not the smartest thing to be doing. And they may hate Starmer, they may see him as deceitful and dull, but they also probably see him as quite safe, quite risk-averse, and that's not the worst thing to have on the steering wheel at the moment. So I think that's Starmer. If you look at Badenoch, the considerations are slightly different. But I think she's also in a better position just for different reasons. I can see now a trend of several media outlets actively beginning to build her up. And so I don't know what happened. I don't know why that is. I don't know why they seem to have gone off Farage a little bit. But there are 2 or 3 titles and news stations actively pumping air into a balloon that basically says Kemi Badenoch is doing much, much better, even though I don't think she is objectively doing much, much better. And I think the episode with Jenrick last week is a prime example of that. Like, she found his fucking resignation speech and had 8 hours to act.
She did.
Yeah, but painting her like some sort of genius for taking the only option that was available to her was so overdone, I think, across all the newspapers, that it signaled to me that there's people hedging a bit more than they did a month ago.
Well, she's going to face this year pressure from 2 elements within her own party. There's the right of the party that have dominated and are now shedding MPs and other senior figures to reform, like autumn leaves. But also, there's what's left of the sort of centre-right moderate, almost what's left of the old One Nation Conservatives, who have been biting their tongues. Actually, what they've been doing is quietly and very politely worrying in the background for the last 3 or 4 years.
Cleverly? Hunt?
Well, to be decided. It may well be somebody that we haven't even thought of yet. But I do think that this is the year, particularly with the May elections coming up, when they have to mount a challenge of some sort. They have to become vocal in some way as well.
So I would disagree only on the basis that there aren't many of them left. Within the membership, there is none of them left. And regardless of whether they want to recreate their own party in the image of a Cameroonian era or not, they will share power with the Reform Party if they have to. Cleverly would quite happily accept going into a coalition arrangement with Reform UK.
Any of them would.
Even if it meant, okay, and now I'm really surrendering my party forever to the harder right element and One Nation conservatism, pro-European, because they're dead forever. Let them go off and join the Lib Dems or the SDP or whatever they want to do. So I would love to believe that that was true and that we were going to see a reclaiming of the party with an ambition to then win the next general election outright. But I think their calculations are that is a step too many in one leap. And so the best bet we can do is to act as a more One Nation tug on Reform's worst nationalistic.
Weirdly, I think you're both right. So I think Kenny's right that there is a real opportunity there. And I think you're right that they're not going to take it.
Well, it's not. I mean, this is not going to happen. There isn't going to be a takeover by moderates of the Conservative Party anytime soon.
No, but there is an opportunity there. There is now a place. There is a place on the political spectrum that is almost entirely unoccupied.
There's a void. That part of the political spectrum has been vacated.
We are internationalist, pro-business, low tax.
Yeah, but the question was, is Badenoch in a better place or not?
I mean,
and I don't think it puts her in a better place.
No,
I think it puts her in a differently difficult place.
I think the answer is yes, purely because she's facing a less hostile press. And I think you will see that borne out. And I think the situation is different for Starmer because it's a much more hostile international environment. But having said all of that, the thing that got both of them and kept getting both of them in trouble in the first place is that they have very poor political instincts. And so I can't say that in the next 4 or 5 months they're not going to make the same mistakes that they have made for the last year and a half. They will. And so they will fritter away their slight improvement in position.
Now, I know for a fact that the leadership campaigns for those in Labour seeking to challenge Starmer are not abating. They are continuing on the assumption that mid-May it will kick off. Yep. So whether you are Burnham doing his big speech that he did earlier this week, whether you're Angela Rayner, whether you are Wes Streeting, whether you are any other of the candidates, they are not backing off. What has changed, I think, is nobody can see any of them wanting to be the one that wields the knife.
Yeah, that's true.
And that has become more acute because of the geopolitical crisis, that being seen to wield the knife at this moment is even less likely to inherit the crown than if you did it 6 months ago or maybe in a year's time, whatever. So I don't think he's out of the water, but I think he may have bought himself a bit more time, no matter how badly May elections could go for the party, on account of the less brutal, sort of savage instincts of the Parliamentary Labour Party candidates as compared to the Tories, who are bloody brilliant at this stuff, have different mechanisms to do it. There is a much lower threshold than there is within the PLP, where you'll need at least a third of them, etc. So I think it's less likely that Starmer faces a challenge in May than it was, but I think they're all hoping to be ready in case one of them does go over the top. I think...
I mean, it's now, 15 weeks to the May elections. I could probably tell you the talking points for each party the day after right now. Labour will say that people always punish governments mid-term. It doesn't mean anything. The Conservatives will say we didn't do as badly as everyone thought we were going to do. The leader facing slightly more difficult questions will be actually Nigel Farage, because they have built up, we've got it in the bag in 3 years' time, to such an extent. And I don't think the May results will reflect that. I mean, what we're seeing coming out of Wales and what we're seeing coming out of Scotland is that people want definitely an option other than Tory or Labour. And if they're given a different one to reform, they go for that. That means that it's basically down to Lib Dems and Greens' defence, council by council, that's up for election. And I can see a situation where Reform don't make huge inroads, and all their rhetoric that we're definitely on the way to government begins to look actually like a liability and quite hollow and like bad expectation management. It's a little bit swirlier than it was before.
Yeah.
And this Trump stuff is beginning to affect confidence a little bit.
To use economic threats against the country that's been considered to be your closest ally for over 100 years is not the kind of thing we would expect. It's wrong. It's bad. It would be very, very hurtful to us. I would just say this. I'm all for Trump taking out enemies of the West, Maduro, the Iranian regime, but if he falls out with his own allies and leaves America isolated, that would be a very bad place to be. So I'm worried about it. I'm concerned about it. I've always been a supporter of the president since way before he got elected first time, but I will be having some words.
We said at the time, we said like a year ago repeatedly, that hitching your wagon to Trump's star has risks. And Trump turning on Europe in this way now, there will be some people supporting reform for genuinely patriotic reasons as they see them, that will begin to see them a little bit as turncoats representing foreign interests that are un-British.
Quiet Riot.
And now, fire up Quiet Riot's good news klaxon, because it's time to grin and share it.
Hey.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. Do-de-o-do-lo-do-de-o-do-lo-do. I want good news.
What uplifting words have you got for us today, Naomi?
Well, it's back to science this week.
Okay.
And something that I think will puncture RFK and the anti-vaxxers, because we've got a landmark study of nearly 14 million children in England.
Wow.
That terrifies me as, somebody who hasn't got children. I didn't even know that we allowed that many of them to be in the country, but apparently we do. It has revealed that getting a COVID infection as a child carries a higher risk of heart complications than any of the vaccinations.
Okay.
And of course, health misinformation remains probably the most damaging legacy of the COVID pandemic, and online falsehoods fueling vaccine hesitancy and sowing mistrust and eroding public health efforts worldwide and having knock-on impacts for other disease has been huge. And of course, we've had shifting policies and political rhetoric in the US that have deepened that confusion, not just the inject yourselves with bleach that we had from Trump during the lockdown itself, but of course now RFK talking about all sorts of wacko things when it comes to the impact of vaccines. So the study that obviously involved all these millions of children in England covered 85% of our entire youth population. And it compared the cardiac risks of COVID infection with those linked to vaccination. And infection comes with this higher, substantially higher risk of inflammatory heart conditions like pericarditis, myocarditis, etc., compared to immunization. Where children had been immunized, cardiac risks were much shorter lived. And so it's been led out of the University of Cambridge by a researcher called Dr. Alexia Sampri. And she said, our whole population study during the pandemic showed that although these conditions were rare, children and young people were more likely to experience heart, vascular and inflammatory problems after a COVID-19 infection than after having the vaccination. And the risks after infection lasted much longer. So another hooray for science, but also a hooray for getting out there a very, very, very effective myth bust for a very, very dangerous bit of rhetoric that has been gaining traction.
So this is a grin and share it, and also a call to action in a way, because it's public service information that we should all be sharing. And we'll put a link in the show notes. Please do spread this message, because the anti-vax misinformation travels so quickly and so widely. We really do need to make a collective effort on this.
And just like that, another jam-packed episode draws to a close. Listeners, thank you so much once again for lending us your ears.
I feel a little bit...
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, like I had a bit of therapy.
Thank
I
you.
hope people listening are feeling similarly.
Me
I'm
too.
just going for methadone. Old school, Scottish.
Yeah.
Also, for somewhat less than the price of a day trip to Davos, you can help keep our show free for everyone by supporting us at ko-fi.com/quietriotpod. And as a Super Brucey bonus, if you sign up and send us a few quid, you'll get an invite to our next editorial meeting, which is going to be, drum roll, on the 17th of February. And that's a chance for all our supporters to influence what goes on in our little show, to tell us what they like, what they don't like, and to worship at the feet of Naomi and Alex. Not so much my feet, the Scottish. Nobody wants to worship their people. So that's ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod.
We'll be back at the weekend with Sunday School, assuming we haven't been annexed in the meantime. I don't know if you mean as a country or personally.
Say please.
And listeners, remember that whatever the weather, whatever the political weather, we love you very, very much.
Bye.
Bye.
You always have to go after, don't you?
It's cute.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
Can you just try and be a bit professional?
The criticism, Alex, has started already.
Says the man who last week messaged me going, I'm trying to make a joke about your boobs in the script, but I don't know how.
Well, because I was doing, what was it? I was doing spheres of influence versus globetrotting. And I thought, naturally, this led
What's big and round?
into Pachonga's memes, medicine balls type area.